Welcome to My Forever Home, the podcast. I'm Frances Cosway and I've helped hundreds of people create forever homes. I can't wait to share the journey with you. So let's start. Hello everyone and welcome to Your Forever Home, the podcast. This is the Bathroom Design Essentials season. And for those of you who are just tuning in for the first time, this is actually a season where we're going through all things bathroom. So I'm going to guide you through the materials, floor plans, all sorts of different things. So if you haven't actually listened to the last previous episodes, there's been 5 already in this season. By all means, tap into the previous episodes because we are now up to episode 6 of Bathroom Design Essentials. Today, I'm actually going to be running through renovations and renovations at different price points so that you can sort of get an understanding of what's possible. So this is purely around renovations rather than a new build. So how I've structured the podcast for today is to actually go through different scenarios. So we've got a budget scenario where I'll sort of walk through what can you do on a budget for around $1,500. What can you do sort of mid-price point for maybe $10,000, $15,000, and then what can you do on a luxe budget, on a more higher end budget? What can you actually do? And I suppose for that point, you really be ripping out the whole bathroom and starting again. So I hope that will then give you some, a feel for what can you actually achieve for certain amounts of money. And I feel that that's really important. And if you are doing your forever home as a new build, this may not be as relevant for you today, but I think it's really interesting to just see how far your money can go. And there'll also be tips in here around where you can actually focus. So without further ado, let's start. So if we're going to do a budget or cosmetic update, and if we're thinking about spending around, $1,500, $2,000, what are some of the things that you could actually focus on? What could you do for that money? The first thing that I would think about is, are your tiles okay? And if they are okay, and what I mean by that is, you can live with them. They might be in really good condition. They might not be cosmetically what you would choose today. But if they're livable and you think that you could put up with them for a while, then I would actually focus on changing outdated tapware, your towel rails, the accessories that go in that bathroom, and then maybe if you can, pull it out quite easily, replace the basin. These things can actually make a big difference. If you're keeping the vanity, you're keeping the tiles, and you just replace the tapware, you might have some really daggy tapware. Just changing the tapware can make a really big difference. Obviously, you need to have like for like because it's a complete retrofit. So if you've got 2 taps, you'll need to replace it with 2 taps rather than pulling out plumbing and changing the tap to a mixer. That's not going to work. And also just changing really daggy, it might even be in a gold, a bright gold that you really are not into. For some, gold might be something that they really love. But if you'd really like to change everything over to chrome, just changing those details in the bathroom can actually make a big difference. Now, if the tiles are not so great, I'll just go back to the basin for a minute. Sometimes if the basin is, especially if it's an above counter basin, sometimes it's possible to pull that out and then actually replace it with another basin. Now, you need to make sure that the cutout is the same if there is a cutout, and that it's not going to actually damage the bench top. But there may be that option. But even if you're just going to change up some of the tapware, that can make a big difference. What we're doing with a client at the moment, she wants to keep all of it exactly the same, and we're just doing a really a freshen up. Let's call it a freshen up. We're replacing the taps, we're replacing the accessories, and we're also replacing a really awful overhead light. It's all rusty now, and it's just looking really, really, really tired. And we're able to do that all within the $1,500 price point. So even replacing some of those really awful lights can make a big difference too. And it means that if you're updating your light fittings, you'll be going to LED, which means the light source is going to be far superior anyway. So that's one take on how to slice and dice your $1,500. If the tiles are really something that you cannot stand, in fact, it's one of the elements of the bathroom that is just driving you absolutely crazy, then I would actually look at using that budget, that $1,500 to $2,000, to actually paint the tiles. Now, this is a little bit controversial. There have been some new products released over the last couple of years, one of them being the Dulux Renovator range. And even though I haven't used these paints personally, I am seeing a lot of great results. But what I'm not seeing is how are those paints going to stand the test of time? And what I mean by that is within a couple of months or even 12 months is all that paint starting to peel off and it's becoming an absolute disaster area to look at. So I wouldn't be a fan or keen or would like you or would suggest that you actually do the floor tiles. I can't possibly imagine that any sort of paint that you're painting over a tiled surface is going to be able to withstand really high traffic and scuffing and so forth. But if you're doing the wall tiles, I think that it's definitely an opportunity to just invigorate and make something. Maybe you're getting rid of a color that you really can't stand in that bathroom. Maybe there's a design, there's an intricate floral pattern in the tile that is really just not rocking it for you. Then I think that using that renovator paint can actually be a really good option. It's not a long-term solution, but generally speaking, if you're doing one of these freshen ups, it's not a long-term solution anyway. It's really just to make do until you know you are able to renovate, or it's just something that you're prepared to live with sort of short term. So I think that that's a great way to really pare the color palette back if there's something really in there that from a design perspective in the tiles that you just can't stand. Now, the other thing, that's going to take a big chunk of your budget. The other thing that you might be able to do is actually change the cabinetry fronts. So let's say you've got a white vanity and it's really all the corners are chipping and it's looking really tired. There is an opportunity to be able to change the cabinetry fronts. So you don't need to change the whole vanity. You're just changing the doors or the drawer fronts. And it also means then that you can paint the sides. So the Renovator Paint series is awesome for painting over laminate. And let's face it, if your bathroom's a little bit older, most of the cabinetry is going to be made out of laminate anyway. So it means that you can update the fronts and then you can get a matching paint to go on the sides. The sides may already be in a really good condition, so you can just update the fronts. Be mindful, though, that those colours may not necessarily marry up at all. And the other thing that you can do is use new handles on your vanity. That can make a really big difference too. So we're really looking at some of the smaller things. You may also want to use the Renovator paint range to paint the entire vanity. Let's say it's bright orange. Bright orange is not rocking it for you. Then if you're able to paint that with the Renovator series, then that can actually really change and tone down the bathroom and make it a lot more palatable for you to live in. There's a lot of things that you can do with paint. And as I was saying earlier, has been such progress in terms of what these paints are actually able to achieve. You may also we're doing this for a client. She's got, quite a neutral powder room, but it just needs something. So we're actually just putting in some pendant lights, a pendant light, and we're replacing the other lights in there. And that's really all it needs. And that's going to make it seem so much better and just, giving it a fresh coat of paint as well. So that's something that you can do for the $1,500. When we're thinking about powder rooms as well, if it's a powder room that you need to freshen up, the other thing that you could do within this budget range is this price point of budget, $1,500 to $2,000, is you could actually paint it a real amazing color. You may want to add some wallpaper. There's some amazing vinyl wallpapers which are completely washable. They're not going to work in a wet area like a shower or something like that, but they work really well in powder rooms, and we're using them all the time now in a lot of our specifications. They look really amazing, and that's a really good way to make a room look almost completely different. So that's another way that you can really freshen up a space if it is a powder room. The other thing, and this is a little bit more about decorating in that space, what can you actually do? Add plants. Plants can make a space feel so much better. Look, everyone knows who's been following me for a while that I'm absolutely plant crazy. And I'm actually going to be releasing a tips and tricks on plants in terms of what plants are going to go in what rooms. And that's actually something that we're going to hand over to our clients so that they can basically pick and mix on which plants are going to work in which light conditions. So plants can work really well in a bathroom. And again, they just make a space feel a little bit different. New towels and a bath mat can make a big difference. Add colour into your bathroom by adding some towels or different coloured towels, and also little accessories. So if you've got a niche above your bath, or you've got a little shelf, you can have some candles, you can have some little wicker baskets and other baskets. They really add a beautiful textural element, and it feels really warm. Beautiful soap dispensers. You don't need to get plastic bottles. You can get gorgeous ceramic ones or glass ones, stone ones. There's terrazzo ones available now, and even having some shells. I've always got a few shells in my bathrooms. I sort of create a little cluster, and then I might have a candle or something as well. So there are some great things that you can do. Paint is probably going to be your best friend. If you're going to replace the tapware and your accessories and so forth, you may then want to paint the rest of the room if it's not tiled floor to ceiling, if the tiles are in really good condition and, they're palatable for your taste, then, just painting, you might even want to add a colour to the paint, particularly if you've only got tiles sort of going up halfway in the room. You can definitely paint or even wallpaper above those tiles. So, and adding a different mirror. So if you've got if you've got a stick-on mirror, once you start pulling that off, you're going to start pulling away the plaster, and then that means you need to get a plaster in, and that's when it starts getting expensive. But if you've got a hanging mirror that's really easy to replace, why don't you replace that with an oval or a round mirror and remove some of the straight edges that are actually in all of these rooms anyway. So mirrors great because they reflect light. So that's a really good thing that you can do too. I think that is probably enough, around $1,500 to $2,000. I think there's lots of things that you can tap into there to invigorate, depending on the elements in that bathroom that are driving you crazy. And you may actually start with one element, and then it might just be over time you can start ticking over the other ones. So in terms of then if we're looking at a mid-range renovation, and this is one where we're probably looking at about $10,000 to $15,000. Now, look, I have in my time been able to create a whole new bathroom in that sort of price point. It's getting harder and harder, and it's really going to depend on your choices. Now, if we're talking about a forever home, I think that's going to be really stretching it, because I think that you will be economizing massively on materials that are going to need to stand the test of time, because you're planning on being in that house for longer than 10 years, because that's my definition of a forever home. So I think that when we're looking at that sort of budget of 10 to 15K, we're really then looking at a cosmetic update and not a complete rip out and replace. So what are some of the things that you can do? In that scenario, really you're going to be very restricted by the floor plan. It's not going to be easy to restrain yourself into that budget and be able to move the toilet, move the shower. As soon as you start moving plumbing, that's where it starts getting expensive, and that's where it starts, and also depending on how difficult it's going to be. So if you've got plumbing already on that wall and you can just move it up the wall, that's going to be a lot more cost effective than actually moving your plumbing from one wall all the way to the other side of the room. Moving toilets is a lot more difficult, and if you're having to do any plumbing that's on a slab, that's also a lot more difficult. They're needing to cut into the slab, and of course the more difficult it is, the more expensive it is. So I think if you're trying to keep yourself within that price point, I would be looking at trying to retain the floor plan as it is. So the shower, the vanity, and the toilet where it is, but then we can actually refresh all those things, but we're keeping the floor plan the same. So this is where we'd then be looking at changing the tiles, changing the cabinetry, and changing the tapware, but not actually changing any of that plumbing structure. So you may want to replace shower bases and so that they're tiled. Not only is that going to create a much bigger sense of space, but it's also going to mean that it's a lot more modern, it's a lot more contemporary by actually replacing that shower base. Now, having said that, if there's a shower base there, that's normally a cost-effective option. One, it's easier to install, but two, it's sometimes installed because it's going to be really difficult to get the fall that's required for the water to run into the drain. So that's going to have to be checked off with your builder to see just how difficult that is and whether that's achievable in the budget. But if you're able to do that quite easily, getting rid of that shower base and having it tiled is going to tick a lot of boxes in terms of aesthetic, creating a sense of space, and just making it a little bit more accessible, because you don't necessarily need to have lips and things that you can trip on. Replace old shower screens for a frameless version. So there's been lots and lots of bathrooms that I've been in. They've got brass fittings or they've got gold fittings, and it's very heavy and there's metal everywhere and it just feels clunky. And they've got, you know, 2 panels of glass and there's a big strip of metal in the middle. That is really all gone. And now we can have frameless shower screens. We might just have a pane of glass instead of having a door. And it really does, again, make the space feel much larger, but it also means that you're just getting rid of that heavy, all those metals, those heavy frames. And so it feels larger and it just looks a lot nicer, and it feels more modern. So that's definitely something you can do. Redoing the tiles. Now, look, this can be maybe done in this budget, maybe not. It's going to depend on a couple of things. One is if you need to rip out all the tiles, it gets a lot more expensive. However, there are some instances, it's not necessarily going to work in every scenario because it depends on the levels within your home. Can you tile straight over the top? It might be that you can tile the wall tiles over the top, and don't forget, every time you do this, you're making the space smaller, or you might be able to tile over the top on the floor, but it really is going to depend on your levels. I know where I've done it before and we're ramping up to carpet, we've been able to ramp up and we don't have a lip at the doorway. But redoing the tiles is obviously going to make the space feel completely invigorated. So that's definitely something that you can do. And obviously the price, you know, the square metre price of the tiles is going to have an impact, but you also then need to allow for, you know, the actual laying of those tiles too, and ripping out the old ones. Replacing cabinetry. So maybe you're going to replace the cabinetry, the shower, all your tapware, and you're happy with the tiles. That might be something else that can be achieved. So if you are going to replace the vanity, I would suggest that then you go for a floor mounted version, particularly if you're doing the retiling and having a floating vanity. Again, that's going to create an illusion of space. It's a lot more contemporary. I spoke about vanities last week. And having a new above counter basin is also going to make the space feel a lot more modern and contemporary, because that's really the things that are, that's what we're doing now. Replacing the shower screen, it's relatively straightforward, but when you've got the base, that's when it gets a bit more tricky. And as I was saying earlier, you might need to, well, you really do need to check out what are the issues with the levels and how difficult it's going to be to get a drain in. If you're up on stumps, it's a lot easier to do any of these things because you can get access to the house underneath. As soon as you're on a slab, it just makes it a lot more difficult. Now, sometimes people ask me if, you know, replacing a vanity is worthwhile, and it absolutely is. It might be that you invest in a really amazing vanity, you might paint the tiles, and that can make a big difference. So, and sometimes even with a bath, I'll say to people, don't get rid of the bath, just get it re-enameled. If it's scratched or it's not looking amazing anymore, you can get them resurfaced. Even acrylic baths can be repaired to an extent. So, you know, that is something where you can save money. The bath will be in the same location. So then you're not mucking around with anything, but you can actually get someone to come on site and resurface it for you. But really, when you're replacing the vanity, it can just create a completely new look. You may go from a really, you know, I don't know, a colour, bright yellow, or you might go with a really, you know, a really badly chipped white one, and you're going to replace it with a nice timber. You know, that can make a really big difference to the feel in the space. All right, so the last one I wanted to talk about was luxe. What can we actually do for luxe in terms of, you know, a more high-end bathroom? And this is really where we're going to be ripping out the whole bathroom we're replacing, all the tiles, and they'll be ripped out, new vanity, new shower, all the fittings and fixtures are being replaced, new lighting. We're really going all out. And so this is not really, and this is where you can also change the floor plan. You might want to move the toilet. You might even want to create a separate toilet, which I highly recommend anyway. But, you know, then you might be looking at high-end materials. So it might be marbles or natural stones, could be those for the bench top. You may actually have marbles and natural stones actually as your floor and wall surfaces. There'd be bespoke joinery. So it's custom design joinery. You'll have luxury tapware, perhaps with premium finishes such as living bronze, living brass. You may have double showers and some really amazing architectural lighting that really adds such a massive difference to the space. Something else that you'd probably want to add in is underfloor heating, heated towel rails, and maybe even a really beautiful freestanding bath. These are more of the high-end things that you would put into a bathroom. Now, it doesn't mean that you need to have all of these things. You may choose one or two things here that you feel is going to make a really big difference for you. So, for example, you may have quite, you know, humbly, no, let me start that again. You may have quite cost-effective fittings. You may really be able to find an amazing bath that doesn't cost you an absolute fortune, but you really want underfloor heating. And I mean, that is really, you get one go at doing that. So you can change your fittings later. So, you know, get the underfloor heating. So these are just some things that you could consider if you are doing a, you know, a high-end bathroom. Rain showers, having really big rain showers. There's showers that also have different types of settings. So you've got a really heavy rain, you've got a jet setting. So there's different types of ones, but the rain showers are really, really big. Some have, you might have a bathroom that's got a really strong connection to the outdoors. So you may have a bath that's got a sliding window that actually just opens right out, and then you've got beautiful landscaping with ferns and birds will come. You might even have a waterfall out there that you can look at but also listen to, so you really feel like when you're bathing that you're in the outdoors. That's a really beautiful thing to do. It may be that you have a shower that's got a strong connection to the outdoors. I'm seeing more and more showers that actually are outdoors, but then there's also this inside connection as well. Or it may be that you've got a floor-to-ceiling window in your shower and then it's landscaped on the outside. So again, you've got that really strong connection to the outdoors. Thermostat showers, look, it makes me laugh to be honest, but they were just the absolute bog standard in Europe, and now they're finally coming to Australia as, you know, this is the latest thing. Look, they didn't look amazing when I was living in Amsterdam 20 years ago, but it was awesome. You'd get into the shower and you turn it on and it went to your preset temperature every single time. So they're definitely looking a lot better. You know, Hands Grower, they're all doing them. But it's awesome because it's just a regular temperature. It never goes too hot. It's never too cold. You don't have to stand there waiting for the right temperature, you know, fiddling around with it. It just is automatically that temperature. It is something I really miss actually. And if you know what your temperature is, everyone in the family will know where they're setting it. And then it just, the shower just goes to that thermostat. So they're great. You may also want to think of a really luxurious finish in your bathroom, such as Tuddeluct, which is like a Venetian plaster. That's a really artisan product. It's completely seamless. It was definitely my dream. It wasn't within my budget for my home, unfortunately, at the time, but it's certainly a luxurious finish. It's very, very popular in Morocco. So for those of you who know me, realise why I love it, because Morocco is one of my most favourite places. You could also have a look at custom freeform concrete bench tops. You know, freeform concrete is done on site, so it's got a special mould, and it's not a cost-effective finish. It's a really luxe finish, and you can get that coloured, but it's absolutely beautiful. So, you know, there's lots of different things that you can look at. You may have a recycled glass bench top. There's, you know, the natural stone that I spoke about last time. So, tiles as well, you know, at the budget end of the spectrum, you're probably looking at around $30 a square metre. But, you know, when you're looking at pizzazz mosaics, glass mosaics, you know, you could be going up to $500, $600, $700 a square metre. So when you've got a luxe bathroom, and I'm not saying it needs to be a $100,000 bathroom, but what I'm pointing out here is some of the things that you can look at when you're doing a more high-end bathroom. And skylights is definitely something that I'll consider doing. Again, if it's in a high-end bathroom, I definitely make sure that it's Velux, it's got a blind on it, that it automatically closes, so that when it opens, because the great thing about that is you're going to let all the hot air out, creates natural light, which is fantastic. But the ones that automatically close mean that when it's raining, you don't have to worry about it, it will just automatically close. So I really wanted to impart with you today, just to give you an idea on, particularly at the lower end of the spectrum, what's something that you can do to give your bathroom a bit of a freshen up, a bit of a, sometimes I call it a quick and dirty, that it's, it's just something that you can, make it feel like you've done something, and it just gives it a new feel good factor. Then you've got sort of that medium area between 10 and 15,000 in terms of really being able to make some more significant changes. And then you've got, what can you do to create sort of this oasis in your bathroom? What are some of the things you can look at, investigate, and consider when money is not as much of a deal, when you're deciding what you're going to have in your bathroom and the finishes that you're going to decide. You can have exactly the same floor plan, and that bathroom may be so significantly more expensive just because of the fittings that you've decided to, and the materials that you've decided to use. So many things to add into a bathroom when budget is not as much of an issue. But maybe pick a few. Like I said, you might have the underfloor heating. Maybe pick a couple of things that really resonate with you. For me personally, I really wanted a connection to the outdoors. So I've got a massive floor to ceiling window in my shower. It looks out over to a balcony where I've got greenery. I can see the sky because it's so high. And that was my big thing. I really wanted an outdoor shower because I'd been to Fiji and all the rest, but that just wasn't possible in this build. So it is what it is, as I say. I'm very grateful to have what I have. So that is a snapshot. Now, there will be a more in-depth episode that I'll do towards the end of the season about budgeting. So what are the things you need to budget for, and, how much would these things, what sort of price do you need to allow for, ranges of things. So that's going to be coming up more towards the end, like I did in the Kitchen Design Essentials series. It's towards the end. Next week, I am so excited. I think I mentioned this last time, but next week I'm going to have Richard from Brothers Tiling. And I'm so excited because I actually have travelled with Richard to the Brothers factory in Spain. And his passion is just incredible, but you are going to learn so much about the difference between really cheap and nasty porcelain tiles, what you get when you actually pay for a quality product, why you would spend the money on a quality product, what's the difference between the different material types and tiles. You're going to learn so much. It's going to be an absolute wonderful, wonderful episode. Richard just oozes passion. He's a dynamo. I don't know where he gets his energy from, but he's going to be with me next week. So I'm so excited about that. And then the upcoming seasons after that, the upcoming episodes, I should say, after that are going to be with some representatives from Reese. We're going to be talking about taps. So we're really now getting into the nitty gritty. I'm certainly not planning for this to be 21 episodes like I did with kitchens, but we're really getting into, the sorts of things you got to think about. I'm even going to do, we decided today that I'm even going to do a whole podcast just on grout. I was with the team today in the studio, and I was sort of, having a big conversation about grout, and they're like, oh my goodness me, there is so much to know about grout. Fine, let's add it to the bathroom season because it is really important. How do you know the right grout colour? What are the differences between the different brands, and how do you choose it? So I'm going to be going through that with you as well. So that's going to be coming up later on in the season. So have a fantastic week. We have got the bathroom Design Essentials webinar. It is now on the 24th of March. I've actually had to change the date from the 23rd because I do have family comes first, and I do have a very important evening at the school for my children. So I've had to change it to the 24th. I am so sorry. It'll now be Wednesday the 24th instead of Tuesday the 23rd. Make sure you register. It's free as always. And there'll be lots and lots of information in that session as well, that webinar. And next week, we've got Richard from Earth Brothers. So don't forget, book a chat. always possible to book a chat with me directly, get access to my diary. I know I say it, but I just want to remind you that I'm very, very accessible. And yes, I answer the phone. I've had a couple of people call me this week and they went, "Oh, you answer the phone?" I went, "Yeah, I'm a person. I answer the phone." So I am real. I do answer the phone. So by all means, book a chat. So happy to chat to you. All right, everyone, have a fabulous week. Bye for now. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of My Forever Home. If you're ready to renovate or build a new home and you need help to create a beautiful and functional forever home, you can book a chat with me directly at whitepebbleinteriors.com.au/chat. Have a great day.